Week 10 of the fantasy football season kicks off tonight on Thursday Night Football. And in today's video, I'm going to help you guys set your lineup at the tight end position. We're going to go through every single matchup from tonight's matchup on Thursday Night Football all the way up until Monday Night Football. And I'll be telling you guys whether I believe you should start or sit the tight ends in all of those games, as well as where I believe they'll finish by the end of the week. Before we can get into things, though, I would like to ask that if you are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, make sure you leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. So without further ado, let's get into today's video. We begin with Thursday Night Football. The Las Vegas Raiders going up against the Denver Broncos. Now, Brock Bowers returned from his knee injury that held him out from weeks 5 through 7 and looked like the 2024 version of himself. He was playing through the injury in week 2 through 4 and was struggling very heavily in those games. Last week up against the Jaguars, he was the tight end 1 with 12 receptions on 13 targets for 127 yards and 3 touchdowns in an overtime thriller that included 1 rush for 6 yards. Facing the Broncos defense that allows the 23rd most points to tight ends on a per game basis. I understand that this is far from the ideal matchup for a guy like Brock Bowers, but at the end of the day, he is just so good. He is my top 3 tight ends this week. He is my tight end number 2 on the week. Anyone that was unfortunate enough to have to start Evan Ingram in a rough matchup for tight ends in Houston last week left Sunday with 0 fantasy points. He had 3 targets for 0 receptions. So realistically, based on how safe he has been this season and being able to get to like 9 fantasy points, you would think that this would be the perfect time for a bounce back. But here up against the Raiders, who are the 28th best matchup for tight ends on a per game basis, there's virtually no reason to start him in a bad matchup when his upside feels so limited. Now we move to Berlin, Germany, Sunday, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. The Atlanta Falcons at the "This is our Colts, this is our team, we bleed blue. This is our Colts, whether win or lose, we love them." The Atlanta Falcons at the Indianapolis Colts. Now, Kyle Pitts is a great option this week. The Colts defense allow the 4th most amount of points on a per game basis to the tight end position. And while Kyle Pitts is far from the textbook definition of consistency at the tight end position, you have to rank him as a top 10 option this week. We have already seen 3 of 8 games this season inside the top 7, and he has had 7+ targets in 3 straight games. So in such a great matchup, Pitts should be in your lineup as a low-end tight end number 1. Tyler Warren had a rare down game last week, which we can't really blame on him, as Daniel Jones was just turning the ball over at a rapid rate. Warren had 5 receptions on 7 targets for 26 yards in a fantastic spot up against the Steelers. And while that may have sunk your team's metaphorical battleship last week, even in the worst matchup for tight ends on a per game basis up against the Falcons, this is a game that has a 48.5 point total. I expect this to be a big scoring game, a back and forth tit for tat matchup. So Warren will remain penciled in as a must start top 5 option for me on the week, even if the matchup might have you panicking a little bit. Now we move to the New York Football Giants at the Chicago Bears, Sunday, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Theo Johnson was limited with a shoulder injury on Wednesday. If he is able to go, then he would be a low end tight end 1 for me. The Bears are the 11th best matchup for tight ends on paper. Theo Johnson has been a top 12 tight end in 2 of the last 3 games, 5 touchdowns over 9 games this season. I like this matchup, as I also believe this could be a higher scoring one. So while Theo Johnson has been very boom or bust all season long, this is the kind of matchup that you want to take a swing on. The availability of Cole Kmet is going to adjust my thought process on Colston Loveland. Last week, Kmet left with a concussion, and Colston Loveland turned the heat up to the maximum. 6 receptions on 7 targets for 118 yards and 2 touchdowns at the tight end number 2. By far his best game of the season, as he didn't even score more than 7 points prior to last week. A game like this has to jolt up his usage. You don't just go out there and drop your nuts in the mouth of a defense and then magically the team is going to completely peel back his usage for Cole Kmet. It's not like Cole Kmet is one of the best tight ends in the NFL, so that's why Colston Loveland isn't getting more work. So if Kmet is active, I really think, regardless, he's going to be a top 12 guy, but I do think you can rank him higher than that if we don't see Cole Kmet That's just kind of my thought process on things. Without Cole Kmet, you just would feel significantly safer about Colston Loveland, though you still probably want to play him because, again, when a guy puts up that big of a game, I feel like the offense is going to just give him a lot more looks going forward. The Giants are the 21st best matchup for tight ends, but I just have to feel good about Colston Loveland here. Now we move to the Buffalo Bills at the Miami Dolphins. Now, Dalton Kincaid freed his willy last week all over the Chiefs defense. 6 receptions on 6 targets for 101 yards and a touchdown as the tight end 3. Last time out up against the Dolphins, he was the tight end 4 in week 3 with 5 receptions on 6 targets for 66 yards and a touchdown. We just saw Mark Andrews hit the Dolphins defense from the back. How you like that? Last week with 2 touchdowns. So in the 5th best matchup for tight ends on a per game basis, I am incredibly high on Kincaid this week as a must start top 8 option. Broncos legend Greg Dulcich played a solid role in the Dolphins getting butt fucked by the Ravens last week in prime time. 5 receptions on 5 targets for 49 yards on 36% of the snaps. If he starts to play more of the snaps than Tanner Conner, who played 45% last week, I may consider actually playing him going forward, as Tua has a fond eye for tight ends, but as of right now, in the 2nd worst matchup for tight ends, based on one game with 5 receptions on 5 targets for 49 yards, you should not be willing to pull the trigger and put him in your lineup. Now we move to the Baltimore Ravens at the cold like Minnesota Vikings. Now, Mark Andrews found all the holes in the Dolphins defense last week. 2 receptions on 3 targets for 22 yards and 2 touchdowns with 2 rushes for 4 yards as the tight end 5. He was outsnapped by Isaiah Likely, who played 59% of the snaps, and Charlie Kohler played 46% of the snaps as well. So while I don't think Mark Andrews is a safe option at all due to the usage of all the other tight ends, in the 12th best matchup for tight ends on a per game basis, I am more than willing to give Andrews a shot at my lineup again, especially because Lamar Jackson is back, right? If this was Cooper Rush or Snoop Huntley, you might want to pump the brakes after going 2 receptions for 2 touchdowns, but with Lamar Jackson back, it's entirely plausible that that is repeatable. He is a high-end tight end 2 for me on the week. TJ Hawkinson with the return of JJ McCarthy. We saw Hawk find the end zone with 2 receptions on 3 targets for 11 yards and a score in the Vikings upset win up against the Lions as the tight end 19. And while I heavily believe that Hawkinson is still a solid tight end, I just don't see him being targeted enough here to quantify actually playing him. And while he scored last week, I just would not project that to happen again. In the 19th best matchup for tight ends, he is a sit for me. Now we move to the Cleveland Browns at the New York Jumbo Jets. Now, Harold Fannin appears to be Dylan Gabriel's favorite and safest target on a week-in, week-out basis. With Jerry Jeudy playing like he left his hands at home on a weekly basis, Dylan Gabriel has leaned into his trust of the number 1 tight end, Harold Fannin. Top 7 tight end in 2 of the last 3 games with 11 plus points in 3 of his last 5 games. His only down game in that stretch was that monsoon game up against the Dolphins with all the rain and all of the wind, so I don't really think that is something that we should be overwhelmingly panicking about. Prior to the bye in his last game in week number 8 at New England, he was 6 of 8 for 62 yards and a touchdown with 1 rush for 2 yards as the tight end 4. So even though we make fun of Dylan Gabriel weekly for just simply not being good at all, Fannin is one of the few bright spots in this offense who you can start in the 16th best matchup for tight ends on a per game basis as a low-end tight end number 1. Now, David Njoku has fallen out of favor in this offense with the rise of Harold Fannin. I do have him, though, as a sit, but if you had to play him, I'm not going to come on here and be like, oh, you're a fucking idiot because you're playing Harold, or because you're playing David Njoku. I just simply do not think that. It's just more of the fact that he is lower on the pedestal than Fannin, right? If you just take Fannin, crumble him up in a ball, Kobe, throw him into the garbage can, then we'd be, giving the Gawk 9000 special to David Njoku because Dylan Gabriel loves tight ends. Last time out, he was 4 of 5 for 37 yards and a touchdown. So again, the upside is there, but in a vacuum, I definitely would much prefer to have Harold Fannin. I just feel way more comfortable playing him. Now, Mason Taylor is in the YOLO start range at the tight end position. It is very evident watching him play that he has the ability to have big games, but the offense as a whole just heavily limits him. This doesn't feel like a rock'em sock'em robots back and forth, high scoring tit for tat game that has a boatload of passing. Taylor is about as safe as driving a car after you drank a fucking handle of Tito's. So he isn't a guy that I can sit on here and highly tout. But we have seen 3 top 12 games out of him this year in 8 games. So it is clear that he could show off that big game. Prior to the bye up against the Bengals, he was 5 of 8 for 34 yards and a touchdown as the tight end 7. So while his floor is lava, right? His floor is incredibly low. It's in the basement. It's just about a point or two. In the 17th best matchup for tight ends on a per game basis, I think you can roll them out there in the tight end 16 through 18 range. Now we move to the New England Patriots at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the battle of Tom Brady. Before we break down this matchup at the tight end position and the rest of the games in today's video, I would like to give you guys a quick word for our friends and our partner over at Underdog. If you're brand new to Underdog and sign up using promo code Notorious, or by clicking on the link in the video description, you receive a free pick, plus a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash, as well as if you play $5 in the pick'em, you receive an additional $100 in bonus funds or in bonus entries. If you don't know how the pick'em works, it's incredibly simple. You make at least 2 picks on the higher or the lower of the players. If those picks hit, you get paid. If you do multiple other picks, then the payout will be higher, but all of the picks need to hit. Make sure you guys do check that out. Promo code Notorious, or by clicking on the link in the video description. Now, for the Patriots and the Buccaneers, I am willing to throw both tight ends out there. Without Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, Cade Otton's role is strong in this offense. He should get a baseline of 5 targets with the upside to see maybe 7 or 8 plus. Last game out before the bye, he had 4 receptions on 5 targets for 40 yards as the tight end 14. 10 plus points in 3 of the 4 last games in the 7th best matchup for tight ends on a per game basis. Cade Otton is in that tight end 13 to 16 range. That while they aren't ranked as like a bang the drum top 12 guy, you do feel good about playing them. And I really do think Baker will just play better this week, because Baker has been on a bit of a skid of not looking very good at all, if we're just keeping it a $150. Hunter Henry has been all over the place this season. Just 3 games out of 9 with over 10 PPR points, and that's just absolutely disgusting, considering how talented Hunter Henry is. Now, his targets bounce around like crazy, so there really is no consistency to his game. The only thing that gets me crawling back to him is how good the offense is. In the 18th best matchup up against the Bucks, he is a fine YOLO tight end 2 fringe start option, strictly just for the upside that he has. Now we move to the New Orleans Saints at the Carolina Panthers. Now, Juwan Johnson is in the high-end tight end 2 range for me on the week, in the 13th best matchup for tight ends on a per-game basis. With Rashid Shaheed now in Seattle, I expect Juwan Johnson to see a very safe floor of targets going forward. I still don't think that Tyler Shuck is much better than Spencer Rattler, and honestly, he may be slightly worse, but hey, Juwan Johnson has been a top 10 tight end now in 2 straight weeks with 10 plus PPR points in 3 straight games. Last week up against the Rams, he had 3 receptions on 4 targets for 31 yards and a touchdown. I know it will always feel gross to start him, as you don't expect the Saints to really be an offense that runs up the score, scores a crazy amount of points, and helps bop. Juwan Johnson straight to the top is like a top 3 option, but I do feel good about him as a high-end tight end too. Jatavion Colonel Sanders is in a 3-headed tight end room of death for fantasy football. Him, Tommy Make That Ass Tremble, and Mitchell Evans should all see work this week. And ultimately, with Bryce Young's hatred of tight ends, and ultimately with Bryce Young's play style as a whole this season not being the best, I just don't think the guessing game here is worth it. Leave them all on your waivers. Now we move to the Jacksonville Jaguars at the Houston Texans. Now, Dalton Schultz was limited in practice on Wednesday with a knee and shoulder injury. He didn't practice on Wednesday or Thursday either last week, and ended up playing and having a big game as the tight end 7 with 6 receptions on 8 targets for 77 yards up against the Denver Broncos. This week up against the Jaguars, who are the 2nd best matchup for tight ends on a per game basis. So even with long neck Davis Mills under center, who is a big downgrade from CJ Stroud, and even with the Texans offense as a whole being far from ideal, we just saw Brock Bowers score 3 times last week up against the Jaguars. So I will roll Schultz out there in the tight end 13 to 16 range. range. Hunter Long missed practice on Wednesday with a knee and hip injury. If he is out, Quinton Morris would be the starter. Regardless of who the tight end here, though, is in Duval, I will not be starting him for one, because Trevor doesn't really feed the tight end, and for two, this is the fourth worst matchup for tight ends on a per game basis, and I don't expect Hunter Long or Quinton Morris to pull a rabbit out the hat and have a big game here. Now we got the Arizona Cardinals at the Seattle Seahawks, the kickoff of the 4 p.m. slate on Sunday. Jacoby Brissett has taken Trey McBride higher, like that Creed song. In 3 starts with Jacoby Brissett, McBride has scored at least 1 touchdown in all 3 games and 4 total touchdowns over that stretch. He has yet to finish outside the top 6 at the tight end position with Jacoby Brissett under center. Tight end 6 last week in Jerry's world with 5 receptions on 9 targets for 55 yards and a touchdown against the Seahawks, who allow the 9th most points to tight ends on a per game basis. I gotta get him as a high-end tight end this week. He is my tight end numero uno. I really like AJ Barner. Last week, he was 3 of 4 for 24 yards with 1 rush and 1 yard for a touchdown in a marauding of the Commanders as the tight end 13. He has been very, very, very boom or bust this season, though. So in the 10th best matchup for tight ends, he could definitely smash. He is dealing with a calf injury, and they also utilize Arroyo a decent amount as well. If you need to start him, I get it, but he is just outside the start-worthy range for me, as he's a guy that it's very hard to trust will be able to get more than 3 or 4 targets. Now we move to the Los Angeles Rams at the San Francisco 49ers. Starting George Kittle has been a roller coaster ride this season. Last week, he was the tight end 28 up against the Giants in MetLife, 4 receptions on 4 targets for 32 yards with 1 rush for -3 yards. He has been a top 12 tight end in 2 games, and his other 2 games, he's been outside the top 24. So not only has the guy been injured, missing time, when he has played, he has not been consistent. Kittle, though, is one of the best tight ends in the NFL. And outside of Christian McCaffrey, he is the best pass-catching option on this team. This isn't the best matchup. It's the 22nd best matchup for tight ends. But you're always going to be playing Kittle, and I'm firing him up as a top 6 tight end. The Rams use 4 tight ends every single week, making none of them startable. Higbee did find the end zone last week and had back in week 6 as well, but with such few targets going his way, and with how far down the, red zone target hierarchy he is, he's a must-sit in the 24th best matchup for tight ends. Now we move to the Detroit Lions at the left hands up. Who are we? The Commanders. Now, tons of people will tout Zach Ertz as a start this week, but when you open the hood up and actually check under the hood, it is very clear that he should be on your bench. With Jaden Daniels in weeks 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, and 9, he was the tight end 13, 2, 83, 5, and 14, and 22. With Marcus Mariota, Ertz was the tight end 24, 27, and 23. So while I still think Ertz has the ability to play well with Marcus Mariota, the 3-game sample size does not back that up. And until he shows to me that he can play well without Jaden Stormy Daniels, I am not interested in playing him in the 20th best matchup for tight ends. If this was the second or, the top 5 matchup, sure, maybe I could talk myself into it. But here, no. Sam Laporta may be the most boom or bust tight end in all of fantasy football, much like his teammate Jameson Williams, who is either on fire or leaving you sleeping with the fishes. Last week was one of his boom games. Tight end 4 with 6 receptions on 8 targets for 97 yards and a touchdown against the Vikings. The week prior to the bye, he scored 4.5 fantasy points over the last 4 games. He has 3 finishes as the tight end 4, and then that game prior to the bye where he's the tight end 32. So while you are probably getting 5 points or 20, I am willing to roll the dice on that. The Commanders are the 6th best matchup for tight ends on a per game basis, and I think this should be a good spot for him to finish as the tight end 4 again. I got him as a top 6 option. He is my tight end number 6. Now we move to the primetime games. Shout out to Deion Sanders, because you waited all day for Sunday night. The Pittsburgh Steelers at the Los Angeles Superchargers. Now, Gadsden is on a real heater over the last 4 weeks. All games with over 11 PPR points and 2 games as a top 3 tight end. In a wet dream matchup up against the Steelers, who allow the 3rd most points to tight ends on a per game basis. You match that with Gadsden's supreme play as of recently. It is a recipe of sugar, spice, and everything nice. Shout out to the Powerpuff Girls for a top 3 finish this week, which is where I got him ranked. for Pat Freiermuth, he is in a situation that is just far too confusing to ever actually play any of these Steelers tight ends. If they had just Freiermuth, I could see myself being like, you know what, fuck it, I'm going to play Pat Freiermuth in a good matchup. But in the 27th best matchup for tight ends on a per game basis, with a tight end room that utilizes 3 tight ends every single week, it is simply too convoluted to start any of them. I will acknowledge, shout out to Roman Reigns, that one of them can have a good game. I'm not going to pretend like it would be impossible, but when you're trying to decipher between 3 tight ends in the same room, in one of the worst matchups for tight ends, it's just not a smart guessing game to play, especially when none of them are guaranteed to even have a good game here. Now we move to Monday Night Football, the Philadelphia Eagles at the Green Bay Packers. Now, I love Luke Musgrave, and I always thought he deserved more time in the limelight in the Packers offense. And sadly for Tucker Kraft, it took an injury to him in order for Luke Musgrave to get a true crack at things. Last week up against the Panthers in a horrifying loss, he was 3 of 3, like a free throw for 34 yards. So while I do expect him, I 100% expect him to take over where Tucker Kraft left off. This is the 30th best matchup for tight end. So if we're talking about, hey, a much better matchup, then I am all over Luke Musgrave like white on rice. But in a bad matchup, I would prefer to just sit him this week, get the binoculars out, watch what happens from afar, and then just play him next week up against the Giants. Dallas Goedert has been incredibly safe this season, which is a shocker if you have ever had Dallas Goedert in the past, and also when you consider all of the weapons they have at their disposal in this offense. But in a 7-game sample size, he has 3 games as a top 5 tight end, 4 games inside the top 10, with 10 plus points in every single game except for 1. Last time out prior to the bye, he was 3 of 3 for 28 yards and not 1. It was buy 1, get 1 free. 2 touchdowns in that game. In the 8th best matchup for tight ends on a per game basis, Dallas Goedert is a must-start top 8 option at the tight end positions. Thank you guys all so much for watching. If you ended up enjoying today's video, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button down below like it owes you some money. I love you guys more than you will ever know. Check out one of the videos on your screen if you haven't seen them already. Check out the Patreon, link in the video description for my rankings. That'll be out on Thursday night, updated throughout the weekend, as well as getting any question you may have answered. I love you long time. Hope you have a great one. Check out one of the videos on your screen if you haven't seen them already. As always, good